be real. How can we actually trust it if we don't understand how it thinks? In this explainer, we are going to crack open that black box. We're going to figure out what it really takes to build an AI we can rely on and transform it from just a mysterious tool into a truly trustworthy partner.
So, let me just ask you this straight up. Would you hand over your dream vacation, I mean everything, your budget, your hopes, all your secret travel preferences, to an AI? It's a huge ask, right? And that little bit of hesitation you might be feeling, well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Okay, so let's imagine we've got this AI travel agent. And I don't just mean a fancy search engine. I'm talking about a generative system that can actually craft the perfect, hyper-personalized trip just for you. One that knows your tastes even better than you do. The potential here is just incredible.
And this is where we hit our first big problem. It's a paradox, really. For the AI to give us that amazing, personalized experience, it needs our data, all of it, our entire digital footprint. But for us, the idea of handing all that information over to a black box, a system whose logic is a total mystery, that feels like a massive risk. And that trust gap, that's what stalls everything.
So how do we fix this? How do we bridge that gap? Well, it all starts with cracking open that black box. We have to understand the why behind the AI's decisions, and that's the entire purpose of a field called Explainable AI, or XAI for short.
You know, this isn't just some nice-to-have feature. It's the absolute bedrock of trust. The core idea here is that giving people a window into the AI's reasoning is pretty much the only way you can build that trust and confidence. It's really that simple. If you can't understand it, you can't trust it. So what is XAI, really? The easiest way to think about it is as a toolbox. It's a whole set of specialized tools and techniques that are designed specifically to make what machine learning does, well, understandable to us humans. It's how we finally get to look under the hood and see how the engine is running. Okay, so how does this actually work in the real world? Let's take a look at one of the most intuitive tools in the entire XAI kit, something called saliency maps. Honestly, you can just think of it as a heat map for the AI's brain. What a saliency map does is pretty cool. It creates this visual overlay on your data, and it highlights the exact pieces of information in your profile that the AI cared about the most when it made its decision. It just turns a complete mystery into a simple picture. And here you can see it in action. The AI recommends Florence. Okay, but why? Well, the saliency map shows us instantly. Look at that. The two inputs that are glowing are Love's Museums and Previous Trip to Paris. All of a sudden, the recommendation makes perfect sense. It's not a black box anymore. We can see the logic. But just knowing what the AI looked at is only half the battle. The next tool in our kit, Feature Importance, takes this one giant step further. It doesn't just show us what mattered. It tells us exactly how much it mattered by putting a number on the influence of each piece of data. And this just lays it all out, clear as day. The AI didn't just glance at Paris and museums, it decided that the trip to Paris was worth 45% of its decision-making power, and a love for museums was worth 30%. Your budget, your desire to relax, yeah, those were much smaller factors. This level of transparency, it's a total game changer. Okay, but here's the thing. Being explainable isn't the whole story. An AI can be perfectly transparent while still making a biased decision. So the next critical layer we have to build is engineering for fairness. Moving past just being accurate to being truly equitable.
Because this is absolutely crucial. An AI can explain its biased decision perfectly. If the data it learned from was skewed to begin with, then its recommendations are going to be skewed too. Plain and simple. So the real question is, how do we fix the bias itself?
Now, bias can pop up in a few nasty ways. Our travel agent, for example, might have a luxury bias. That's where its training data is so packed with 5-star hotels and fancy resorts that it almost never suggests a cool hostel or a budget-friendly city. Or it could fall into an exclusion risk, where it just ignores entire countries or cultures simply because they weren't in the data it was fed. This chart right here, this gets to the absolute root of the problem. When the AI's entire education, its training data, is made up of 80% luxury destinations, its whole worldview is warped from the start. It's going to recommend what it knows, and what it knows is a biased slice of reality. So the technical fix for this involves something called debiasing algorithms. Think of them like a very, very smart filter that you apply to the training data. They're designed to find these imbalances and then correct for them, maybe by boosting the signal from underrepresented data points before the AI even gets a chance to learn the bias. And here's what that looks like.
After running those algorithms, the data set is way more balanced. It looks a lot more like the real world. Now budget and niche destinations actually have a fair shot, which means the user gets more interesting, more creative, and more equitable suggestions.
But let's be clear, technology alone is not a silver bullet. The final, absolutely non-negotiable safety net is having a human in the loop. This means real travel experts, diverse groups of users, real people, looking at the AI suggestions to catch the subtle biases that code alone is always going to miss. It has to be a partnership.
So when you put it all together, when you combine the transparency of explainability with the ethics of fairness, something really powerful starts to happen. We stop seeing the AI as just a tool, and we start building a real partnership. This is what kicks off something called the virtuous cycle of trust.
And here's how that cycle works. It's pretty simple. Step 1. All those XAI tools create transparency, and that builds some initial trust with the user. Step 2. Because they trust the system, the user's willing to share more data. Step 3. Now, with that richer data, the AI delivers way better, more personalized results. And step 4, that awesome result reinforces the user's trust, and the whole cycle starts all over again, but even stronger this time. And this brings us to what might be the single most important insight of this whole thing. For these new AI agents, the quality of what they produce isn't just about clever code. It is a direct reflection of how much the user trusts them. More trust gets you more data, and more data directly translates to a better, smarter, more helpful AI partner.
So I'll leave you with one last thing to chew on. When an AI finally learns to explain its own reasoning using all the data that we gave it, is it really showing us how it thinks? Or is it just holding up a mirror and showing us the patterns, the priorities, and maybe even the biases that we were the ones who taught it in the first place? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.